Well, okay, let us get started. Open the fall special town meeting for the town of Norfolk. I call it to order. My name is Jason Tallerman. I am your moderator. I declare that the warrant has been duly posted and published and that the reading of the warrant is hereby waived. If we could stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So a few of the players here tonight. To my left is Town Clerk Carol Green and Anthony Turry. To her left, we have Jack Hathaway, our Town Administrator, Todd Lindmark, our Finance Director, Kevin Calcutt, Member of the Board of Selectmen, Jim Lehan, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, Dave DeLuca, Town Council, Jeff Palumbo, Member of the Board of Selectmen. On the floor in front of me, we have Steve McDonough and the advisory board who will be reading all the motions and providing some explanations for you here tonight. Before I get into some of the procedurals, I'd like to recognize Mr. Lehan for a moment.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Does this, will this move? Well, I'll have to stay here. I apologize for that. Some of you may know that this is Mr. Hathaway's last town meeting. Jack has been with us for 15 years. He's attended 30 of these meetings over those 15 years, and unfortunately, this is going to be his last. Jack is moving to Maine, where he'll enjoy 2.5 weeks of summer. And the parking ban, I think, is going to last till July. Jack would be my best guess. But Jack has been an incredible town manager for us. Jack joined our government as a town government, Jack joined town government as a town accountant, and he was our first finance director 15 years ago. In fact, when Jack started 15 years ago, I didn't need these to read either, but unfortunately I do now. When Bob Markle, our town administrator, notified us of his departure, he went to Ipswich, and he gave us the required 30 days notice. We asked Jack to step in as on a temporary basis, as at that time he was not a candidate for town administrator. He agreed to do that. He served in that capacity for 8 months, and during that time it became very clear to the board that we wanted Jack to be a candidate for that position. So we asked him to submit an application on a late basis, as it was, and as they say, the rest was history. Jack became our town administrator. Some of you may not know that the average tenure of a town administrator is between 4 to 6 years. In fact, our neighbors Rentham, they've been through 4 town administrators during the same time that Jack has served the town of Norfolk. So you might ask, why is the tenure of town administrators so short? Why is it such a transient business? Well, there is a reason. Let me just go back and say that when we hired Jack, had we sat down with him and negotiated a 14-year contract, that contract would have been, I think, somewhat like this. You will have 3 direct bosses every year. And by the way, one may change every year. You'll need permission from 6,100 voters to approve every dime you spend. You will create and manage what will be a $40 million budget, but under no circumstances shall you spend 1 dime more than what the 2.5% tax levy allows you. By the way, we also expect you to underspend those budgets and to create surplus. You will increase our reserves from 300,000 to just a little bit under 2 million during that time frame. You will oversee a police department that will keep our community one of the safest in the state. And by the way, being the second safest would be a good target if you can reach that. You will implement an ALS capability in our community, converting our personnel from EMTs to paramedics. And by the way, you're going to do that within budget. You will work with the finance department to manage our financials in such a manner that you will raise the town's bond rating. And oh, by the way, we would like that to be one of the highest bond ratings of any town our size in the state of Massachusetts. And to those 6,100 voters, you will hear their complaints, and you will smile, and you will do everything you can to meet their requirements. That's the job. I suspect that most of us would have had second thoughts if we just got to the three bosses part. But that's what a town administrator has, and that's what a town administrator does. It's a far more difficult job than most people understand. None of us are perfect, yet the job description of a town administrator requires a perfect person. Jack leaves us in a better place than when he started. He's always been invested in our community. His honesty and his integrity are unquestioned. Although moving to Maine without a job commitment does make us kind of question his judgment. I know that each and every selectman Jack has worked for, and there have been 8 of them, as well as all the department heads and town employees, would tell you that he will be deeply missed. He's always had an open door policy. He cares about the employees and the citizens of Norfolk. And while Town Hall is open 4 days a week, Jack's job has been a 24/7. He travels the roads during winter storms with the DPW director to be sure that the citizens are safe. He attends many, many late night meetings with multiple boards, public forums, and more than you probably know. That is the life of a good town administrator. We're a small town, and this is a town that has a hands-on job for his town administrator. We've had some fun times. We've had some difficult times. Jack and I have butted heads many times over those 14 years, but we've always been able to go out and have a beer at the end of that conversation. I have enjoyed very much having the opportunity to share this time with Jack, and I know the other board members, Jonathan Smith I see here, and some other selectmen perhaps, would also say the same thing. We have had the privilege of working with him, and while no one is perfect in this job, he's been pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. So on behalf of the citizens, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and the citizens of Norfolk, we have a plaque for you, Jack, which if you will put it up on there for me. Hopefully, Sue, can we get that up? Perfect, I hope. Well, we're ahead of the game. Carol, can I have that? This plaque reads, presented to Jack Hathaway by the Norfolk Board of Selectmen on behalf of the citizens of Norfolk in recognition of and appreciation for 15 years of untiring and dedicated service to the community of Norfolk. Your loyalty and friendship will long be remembered. Jack, we're going to miss you more than you know. And stay down there, you're too tall. Thanks. But you have been of great benefit to this town. We are in a better place because you were here, and we're grateful for that. I wish you and your family the very, very best in Maine. We'll publicize your address up on the webpage so that those that are visiting can come and drop in, seeing as you have 2 vacant bedrooms now. I hope you get employed before you get up there too long. We wish you well in that. But you have been a terrific town administrator. We've been very fortunate to have you. We will miss you. We wish you the very best in Maine. Before we completely say goodbye, we wanted just to share a few pictures where we can all sort of say farewell to the Hathaway family. Not only has Jack been a great contributor to the community, but his wife Liz, who has coached 2 teams up at King Philip and very involved in the schools, she too has contributed to this community in many, many ways. So this is truly a Norfolk family. We're grateful for the time you've been here. And as I have said several times, we will miss you deeply. So Jack, thank you for all you've done.
Well, thank you very much, James. Thank you very much. It's, I've been here the whole time with you, so he's been the one constant. Jim talks about the only thing in life, the only constant in life is change, and the one thing that have been a constant in my job here has been you. And it's been a pleasure working with you and the rest of the board. And Joyce, you were on the team that hired me many, many, many years ago, and I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure working with you as well. You know, Jim talks about the tenure of a town administrator being 3 to 4 years, and it's true. I think there are like 40% of the town administrators are turning over in the next 2 years. And it's, but my longevity here is not only do I have a high threshold for pain, this is a great town, and it really is. It's a great community. My wife Liz, as she likes to hide in the back, she and I have loved the community. We've lived here, you know, since the early 90s. We raised our 2 kids here, and it's just been, it's a great community, and I would never have lasted as long if it wasn't such a great community with great volunteers, and the team of people that I worked with are second to none. I'll leave it at that. Great bunch of people. So thank you all, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Is Jeff Chalmers here tonight? No, I don't see him. I'd like to make an announcement on behalf of Kay Doyle to announce that she is organizing again the community sing-along of carols on Town Hill on December 15th at 5 p.m. with musical accompaniment from the high school along with Ivy Music Academy. There will be a children's chorus as well. If you need more information, there is a Facebook group, and you can email at norfolkcarols@gmail.com. It's been a great event, and she's doing it again this year. Please, your participation is appreciated. Going to go over briefly some rules for town meeting. We're governed by town meeting time as well as some local bylaws. The warrant that was available has some other general rules and guidance for how to make motions and what the rules of town meeting are. I will explain procedures as needed. I'll recognize requests for points of order if you don't know what is going on or if you have a question as to whether somebody did not follow regular order. Motions, all motions tonight, main motions will be made by the advisory board. Motions for, you may see a motion for indefinite postponement here and there. That is really a motion to take no action on an article or to dismiss it. Those who make the motions will have the first opportunity to explain, and then we'll go to other folks in the audience. Motions to amend, if you have any, must be in writing. We will help you with that. Carol and I can put those into form if you don't already have them in form. If there's ministerial corrections during the course of reading a motion, I will accept a friendly amendment without having to get more formal than that. If there's discussion on motions, I will try and balance discussion as best I can. Everyone will have a chance to speak on a matter, but at a certain point I want to avoid repetition, and I may seek new comments only. Generally speaking, you have a maximum of 5 minutes to the mic your first time, 3 minutes to the mic for your second time on any particular article. I may allow someone with new information to speak a third time, but I may also limit speakers to 2 times at the mic. All comments and questions come through the moderator. Come up to a mic if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you want to offer some debate, give your name and address at least the first time so that Carol can record it. I encourage lively, colorful, diverse debate. I hope we continue to have that debate, and we support that here. However, no personal comments, no chattering while people are making comments, while people are speaking, and all comments must be civil and respectful. I want to hear facts. I want to hear your opinions. I don't want to hear is what you think someone else's opinion is, so keep it to what you yourself have to offer the town meeting. We have a lot of local officials here. Between myself and them, we will get to any questions that need answering. On the voting itself, I'll try and count on a voice vote. If I can't, I may ask for a show of hands. If I still can't determine if we have enough votes, then I may ask you to stand. I'll appoint tellers, and we will take a standing count. I do respect a call of the question or a motion to cut off debate, but if it's premature, and you have to come up to a mic and do it, but if I think it's premature and there's still some debate out there that people want to offer, I may ask you to hold on to that. I may also say that we're not hearing something new and kind of call the question and move to a vote myself. There is a lot of business to get to tonight, but I am confident we can take care of it in pretty short order. With that, Article 1, bond premiums and borrowing. Mr. McDonough.
Mr. Moderator, I vote to approve Article 1 as set forth in the warrant.
Seconded.
Mr. McDonough.
Article 1 is submitted by the Finance Director. It requests authority to transfer any funds acquired by the town through the issuance of a bond related to a specific capital project. Capital projects include things like constructing a building or purchasing a piece of equipment. The premium received by the town upon the sale of the bond or notes could then be applied to the project costs, thus reducing the amount borrowed for the specific capital item. This language does comport with Chapter 44, Section 20 of the Mass General Laws, which was last amended in November of 2016.
Thank you, Mr. McDonough. Any other comments or discussion on this article? Requires a simple majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. For Article 2 and some subsequent articles, there was a handout that has a spreadsheet. We'll have some of this stuff on the screen as well. This will refer to some of the actual numbers. This is Article 2 relates to transfers by and between various budgets. Mr. McDonough.
Mr. Moderator, I vote to approve the transfers as displayed on the screen and provided in the handout.
Seconded.
Mr. McDonough.
The Advisory Board recommends approval of this article, which is our standard transfer article, requesting authorization to adjust departmental budgets for the current fiscal year, which is fiscal year of 2019. Only town meeting has the authority to transfer funds between budget appropriations and to add funds to existing budget appropriations. The transfer list is set forth in your handout and shown on the screen. Just briefly on the transfer list, you can see the description of the transfer on the left-hand side, followed by the account that it's coming from, and where the funds are headed to over on the right. You will note that the Board of Health, Buckley and Mann, LSP, is a licensed site professional, and that person will be protecting the town's interests as the development of that property and project moves forward. We also have a number of transfers that relate to ambulance expenses and receipts. So basically what's going on there, you'll see the 184,106 is money that's received from ambulance runs, and then we're using those funds to take care of the expenses that are listed below. And also, you might want to note fire department salaries and expenses. That does include the addition of a position on our fire department. So we'll have a full staffing of 4 firefighters during the week at times. My understanding was we were at 3. I think those are the highlights on the transfers.
Thank you, Mr. McDonough. Any comments, questions on any of these? Mr. Rosenberg. Mr. Rosenberg, if you have questions on more than one, you can stay at the mic and maybe ask them all, and we'll answer all those questions for you.
Thank you. My question is just on what something means here. There's something that says band payment FY19 ambulance, and I want to know what a band payment is.
Someone? Mr. Linmar. See Jack already passing the buck. Done?
Yeah, the band payment for the ambulance is, we were purchasing an ambulance to the amount of it's going to be about $295,000, and as part of that borrowing, we have to make a payment for that borrowing, and that first payment is going to be about $67,000 to cover that purchase of the ambulance.
Any additional questions or comments on Article 2? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Article 3, unpaid bills. Mr. McDonough.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 3 in the amount of $501.63.
Seconded.
Mr. McDonough.
At the close of our fiscal year, any bills that were incurred related back to the previous year must be voted on and approved. And as you can see here, our not so lengthy list of bills that need to be paid. Both relate to a copier machine at the town hall.
Any questions, comments on this? This is a payment of a prior fiscal year's bills. It requires 9/10 vote at a town meeting. Let's see if we can get a unanimous vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 4. So under Article 4, we have a number of different types of expenditures. I'm going to divide this into two motions to account for different types of expenditures and different quantums of vote. Each motion will be separately debated and voted upon. The first motion relates to the routine list of capital items. Mr. McDonough.
Mr. Moderator, I vote to approve Article 4, the first portion of Article 4, as displayed on the screen and provided in the handout.
Seconded.
Mr. McDonough.
The first part of Article 4 provides funds from free cash in the amount of $531,716 to fund capital items as set forth in the handout and also displayed on the screen.
And is there a, yep, and that's the second page of the first motion. So there, it's both. And this is all on your handout as well, labeled under Article 4A that was available out in the hallway. Any further comments from the advisory board on this, Mr. McDonough?
We can see here we have some work for underground utilities. We have a leachate roof, and I was told that's how you pronounce that, so I hope Mr. Lutz was correct. And that's for $5,134.07. We have a septic system for police and fire, school construction, the storage tank removal, when I believe that was also at one of the schools. Mr. Lindmark, yes. And public additional funds for being transferred to the public safety building and Lawrence Street Bridge.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on motion 1 under Article 4? Sir.
John Nuhibian, 3 Knoll Drive. Just a question on the public safety building transfer. What specifically are those funds for, Mr. Moderator?
Jack, I don't want to tax you here. You or Todd, if you could.
I'm not sure I can tell you specifically what that's for. I'm not sure I can tell you specifically what those funds are for. As you will hear in the committee update and a little bit later, and we've been talking about, unfortunately, for about 6 months, we are over budget on that project. Some of the complexities of making sure the infrastructure is there for the regional dispatch center, and we as the landlord have to share some of those expenses. We've also had some, I'll just say, frustrations with the architect. Some of the design documents we've been struggling with, and there have been a number of change orders related to that. We've gone through mediation for one part of that. We suspect we'll go through some more mediation and potentially some other processes before we're done. But we're over budget, and we're trying to help just put some funds back into that. As you know, we're also preparing to do convert the public safety building into a fire station in the future, and we want to make sure we have enough funds to do that project as well.
So this isn't actually for furnishings at this point? This is part of the construction?
You know, the big ticket item was about $600,000 of the roof of a cost that ended up being a change order. And so we've had to scrimp and save in a lot of different other places in the project. And so these items all on the left are old projects where we actually ended up with surpluses. Those projects are all completed, those top 5. So we were able to take those surpluses and we're recommending putting them towards the public safety project, which is unfortunately not going to have a surplus.
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
There'll be further discussion of the public safety building a little bit later during committee reports as well. Any other questions on the list under the first motion? Seeing none, requires a simple majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. The second motion is expenses for design for roof over at H. Olive Day. I believe Mr. McDonough?
Mr. Moderator, well, that's sort of loud. I move that the town of Norfolk appropriate the amount of $250,000 for the purposes of paying costs of Massachusetts School Building Authority required designer services and owner project management fees at the H. Olive Day Elementary School located at 232 Main Street, Norfolk, Mass. 02056. The engineering and design of the roof replacement at the school building, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, the project, which proposed repair would materially extend the useful life of the school and preserve an asset that otherwise is capable of supporting the required educational program, and for which the town of Norfolk may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Said amount to be expended under the direction of the Norfolk School Committee. Said amount is an addition to $50,000 received from the Norfolk Advisory Committee Reserve Fund transfer on July 26, 2018, and for this aforementioned project. To meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Town of Norfolk Board of Selectmen, is authorized to transfer said amount from Freeman School Construction Fund Account number 3133, received pursuant to Special Town Meeting Article 4, November 10th, 2009, totaling $946,605. The Town of Norfolk acknowledges that the MSBA's grant program is a non-entitlement discretionary program based on need, as determined by the MSBA, and any project costs the Town of Norfolk incurs in excess of any grant approved by and received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the Town of Norfolk. Provided further that any grant the Town of Norfolk may receive from the MSBA for the project shall not exceed the lesser of 51 and 63/100% of eligible approved project costs as determined by the MSBA, or 2, the total maximum grant amount determined by the MSBA.
Seconded.
And we apologize for the long motion. The state makes us do it because there are some state funds involved here. Mr. McDonough.
The advisory board recommends approval of this Article 4B, as we're calling it, and will help us fund this one of the first portions of replacing the roof at HOD, which is, as I understand it, quite an involved project. This is mostly just for the design phase, and the roof project is not just the roof itself, but it also involves a lot of structural work at the school and things that go on underneath the roof. The total project estimate is close to $1 million.
Thank you. Questions, comments on this article? Seeing none, this is transferring from prior borrowing, so it requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is a unanimous vote. Thank you. Article 5, Mr. Lutz, first time at the mic as advisory board member.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 5 as displayed on the screen and provided in the handout.
Seconded.
Thank you. Mr. Lutz.
The revenues and expenses associated with providing water to the town's residents are independent of the town's general operating expenses. Revenues from water users are segregated into the Water Enterprise Fund, and all expenses associated with providing town water are paid from that fund. However, town meeting approval is still required for the payment of these expenses. The expenses covered by this article are of two types: routine operating expenses, mostly paid to third-party service providers, and the reallocation of small amounts remaining from completed funds to the Holbrook Street Well project. And you can see on the screen where the funds are coming from and where they're going to.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz. Any questions, comments on Article 5? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Article 6, Mr. Lutz.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 6 as displayed on the screen and provided in the handout.
Seconded.
Mr. Lutz.
This is a request to spend $2,700 for expenses in connection with the town's wastewater enterprise fund. This fund is similar in concept to the water enterprise fund, except on a much smaller scale. All expenses are funded by town residents who utilizes the services provided by the wastewater treatment plant, but the payment of any expenses from this town require town meeting approval.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on Article 6? Seeing none, requires a simple majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. It passes unanimously. Article 7, departmental and project reports. This does not require a motion. This is just an opportunity for our local boards and committees to give updates on what they may be up to. We have two that have come forward today. I see Mr. Cronin approaching. So why don't we get a report on how we're doing with the public safety building, adding on to what Jack's already said. Mr. Cronin.
Thank you. I believe we have some pictures to show of the current building, which is nearly completed. There is our new police station. You can see the outside is pretty much completed. It is a beautiful building. And it's in its final stages, as you can see, and we anticipate occupancy sometime late January, early February. Unfortunately behind our original schedule, but that's the way it is. And in terms of the overall project, we have had some significant cost overruns. The majority of these overruns have resulted from two major considerations. First is the complexity of the project. I want to remind everyone that this is a joint project between the state and the town. This is only the second regional dispatch center to be constructed in Massachusetts. The complexity of the project has resulted in some cost overruns. The second consideration is the architectural drawings prepared by our architect contained a number of errors and omissions that resulted in a number of change orders that were not anticipated. These have been well documented by our staff. Our priority right now is to complete the projects, and upon completion of the projects, we will consider our options as far as possibly recovering some of these cost overruns. The good news is, it's a beautiful building. We generally have been very happy with BC Construction, who has done the construction on the building. They do quality work. They want it to be a good building because they have integrity, and in the end, we're going to end up with a beautiful building. As to the fire station, we're going to begin design work in January once we get the final numbers on this project. While we've had cost overruns, obviously, as I just said, we're going to try our very best to complete both projects with the current funding. Again, until we get into the real design of it in January and February, we'll see where we go. Months ago, we terminated our project management firm. We just weren't satisfied with the results. So in the meantime, our project facilities manager, Matt Hafner, has taken over those responsibilities. And I want to tell you, he's done an outstanding job for this town. And we should thank him because he's taken on a lot extra work and he's done a lot more responsibilities. And the project has really advanced much better with him in charge rather than our existing, with the original project manager. So, So that's where we stand. Again, we'll be moving in shortly, and then we're going to get to work on the converting the current public safety building into strictly a fire station, and we're going to do our very best to see what funds we have left and make that a building that we can all be proud of and also serves the town well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Cronin, thank you for reporting to town meeting again on this project. From the Government Study Committee, Mr. Jonathan Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Town Government Study Committee was one of the warrant articles that was passed back in the spring. It asked the Board of Selectmen to appoint a study committee to look into the way our government in Norfolk is structured, what people want to have changed or not changed. It is not a charter commission, so therefore anything that we recommend can be separated out, and it is not one document that has to be up or down approved by residents of the town. Right now we have 5 members. The selectmen would like 2 more. We hope that people will volunteer or want to get involved in this project. It will take about a couple of years to do various items about it. Right now we have some meetings scheduled in December and January, but we have a special meeting on January 23rd in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, room 124, to hear from you what you would like the government to be in this town. One of the issues that's come up at our first meeting was the lack of communication, that people don't know what's going on in town and have a hard time finding out sometimes, and to get more people involved so that we have more people at town meeting, for example. So we'd like to hear from you on January 23rd. It'll be a listening session. We won't be doing the talking, you'll be doing the talking. And we hope that 2 of you will come forward and volunteer to be involved in this project. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Article 8, regarding transfers from the Community Preservation Fund to the Affordable Housing Trust. Ms. Klein.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 8 as printed in the warrant.
Seconded.
Ms. Klein.
The article was submitted by the Community Preservation Committee with the approval and advice of the Board of Selectmen. The article allows for allocation of community preservation funds, including $60,800 from the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund and $250,000 from the undesignated reserve fund to the Norfolk Affordable Housing Trust Fund, so they may purchase existing homes and designate them as affordable housing units.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. And for those that haven't seen this article before, it is a fairly routine article. The Affordable Housing Trust does not have to come back to town meeting every time when they're doing their work and having to act in the marketplace to complete their work, and this is something that we've done pretty typically. Any questions on Article 8 or comments? Seeing none, it requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. It passes. Was there a smattering? It passes with a clear majority. Article 9, Mr. Beachkovsky, regarding an amendment to zoning bylaws.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 9 as printed in the warrant with the correction shown in red on the screen.
Seconded.
Mr. Beachkovsky.
The advisory board, the advisory committee's recommendation is based on the planning board's intent with this article to provide greater access to the water supply protection district. Today, it is only available on the GIS system online. The planning board feels that does not make it readily available to the public. Once the bylaws are changed, the map will be displayed where the bylaws are available such as the town hall or library, as well as available on the website.
Thank you. Can I get a recommendation from the planning board, Mr. Byron? You can do it from your, unless you want to chat about it.
Planning board authored this article and is in full support of it. It provides additional information to all town boards as well as town citizens in terms of what areas of water supply protection districts based on the wells that we have in town.
Thank you, Mr. Byron. This article is a zoning amendment. Does anyone have any questions or comments on it? Come right down to the mic.
Hi, Sandra Myatt. I see that you've omitted the Zone 2 for the Franklin wellhead, which is a significant part over near the Franklin line, and I asked that it be added to the map.
Okay, I'm not sure I can take that amendment, Ms. Maya. Can we also get your address quickly for the record?
8 Eric Road.
Thank you. Anyone can answer questions about the Zone 2? If anyone...
It's shown on the GIS map.
Understood.
Okay.
Our town planner is here.
Good evening, Rich McCarthy, town planner. So the Zone 2 for the Franklin well is on the, it is covered by the DEP as far as zoning water protection goes. It's not on our map. We couldn't actually add it to this map tonight because we didn't actually publish this map with that on there. If that was something that the town desires, we would need to bring it back to town meeting to add that on there. The purpose of tonight's map is to, this has been something that we've been working with the DEP that we need to move forward on in order to get the Holbrook Street well online. And so this map is serving that purpose.
Let me ask you a question on this to try and get to whether or not I would allow an amendment to add the Zone 2. Is beyond what is shown on the, in terms of what is shown as Zone 2 generally, how much of a change would that be to what that is right there?
It'd be a very significant
Because
change.
it's not just that.
No, actually, in fact, it's not just the, if you would go to add adjacent community wells on there, you would be, Millis would need to be added on there. If that were the case, Franklin, Rentham. So it's not just one community Zone 2 that would essentially be added to that map.
So, Ms. Maya, my concern with this, I hear what you're saying, and I think it's a reasonable request. At town meeting, the town meeting votes on what is presented to them, and if we expand the scope too much of a zoning article, then people wouldn't have proper notice of it. I think what you're saying makes a certain amount of sense, but I'm concerned that it goes beyond what the article says. It mentions a specific map with a specific date, and if we had expanded it in any kind of significant way, I think people at home may not have enough notice. So I would rule a motion to amend out of order. I would recommend that you work with our planner and with the planning board maybe to get a further amendment, if or at least to consider that. But for this meeting, I think it's beyond the scope to change this.
All right, thank you. Is it possible to indefinitely postpone until all the other districts are labeled on the map?
If you wish to make a motion, it would be a motion to substitute with a motion to indefinitely postpone. That is entirely up to you.
I would like to make that motion.
Okay. If you could, and I will accept that verbally, but if you could then put your, write it down here, come up and see us here, and well, as soon as you're done here. So do I have here a second on that? Second. Okay. Do you want to say anything more about it before we kind of tie up the loose ends here and have some debate on it, or?
Just that the GIS map is readily available online. I just got it up on my phone, and I don't know if anybody could explain why we need to have this right now. That might be helpful.
All right. So procedurally, one second. Procedurally, what we have here is not her motion on the floor, but a request to substitute her motion instead of the main motion. So her motion, if you accepted it as an amendment, would essentially cancel out the main motion. We'd be voting on pushing this off to a future town meeting. So I will have debate right now only on whether or not you want to change the motion midstream to a substitution. So that is what we are considering now. If you don't want to change the article to what she is suggesting, then you can, you would be voting no on this. But any questions or comments on this? Mr. Bakanowski, I believe, was up first. And then I do want to hear from the planner and the planning board if they're available.
Andy Bakanowski, 20 Naugatuck. Actually, I was going to echo what Mrs. Mayat said, but Medfield also has Zone 2s coming into Norfolk and Walpole as well. The fact that the diagram does show Zone 2s extending to other towns for our wells doesn't make sense to show Zone 2s for their wells that the town doesn't draw from. So I mean, that's, I was going to get up, but Sandy beat me to it. So, okay. But I would support indefinitely postponing until those are added.
Thank you. I think we had Mr. Rosenberg next.
I just have the question of what harm, if any, would there be to indefinite postponement?
Either the planner or someone, or Mr. Byron from the planning board, if we could have our planner answer that, but please, and then we'll get back to the people in order.
Okay. There's a 2012 Water Management Act permit that was granted to the town of Norfolk, which had been requested from the DEP that we change the language in our water resource protection bylaw, because the current reference to the Zone 2 DEP wellheads refers to the Mass GIS, which is on the computer system of the state. It's not readily available to the public. What we're attempting to do here is to have it overlaid on top of our zoning map. This is already the existing Zone 2s that are governing in the town of Norfolk presently, right now, which would not change and would allow us to go forward with the Holbrook Street well. There's two pieces to the Holbrook Street well. One is to get the well pumping test approved through DEP and then go to the Water Management Act. This is one of the requirements of the state for us to do to move forward with that well. If we don't do this, that's going to delay that process, potentially. We are going to come back in the spring when we adopt the new Zone 2 for the Holbrook Street well. We originally were going to come to a Holbrook Street well tonight, but there's been discussions with the DEP that we might be able to increase the water withdrawal through that, which in turn would increase the geographic area for that well. So we proceeded with this to fulfill what the DEP asked us to do. And that's what we're doing. If we don't do it, I think it may delay things. I don't know for sure. I can't, speak to DEP tonight, but I'm not sure necessarily the harm in, if we want to do this, come back in May, a few more months to come back with those other areas.
Okay. Thank you very much. We had another question. No, we're all set there. Mr. Byron?
Yeah, I don't think the planning board would be against the proposal to add the zones from adjacent towns as they overlap into our town, much as ours overlap into theirs. It's just a matter of, do we want to delay the procedure on adopting the whole Holbrook Street well? So my thought is, let's approve what we have here and come back in May and address the issue that has been raised on the floor by several of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byron. Mr. McGee? Name and address, please.
Hi, Bob McGee, Director of Public Works. I'm worried that we don't have all the information on this, and Rich has done a great job of explaining the need to having this passed tonight. This does, in fact, could delay our many multi-year search and investment into that well site going online. I see no reason why we can't add this, and I do agree we should. But why can't we do it in May and approve this tonight? Because if this does delay us, we're talking about construction going on another year. We're in desperate need of water now, and unless somebody can tell me differently, this would be tragic to delay a positive vote on this zoning map. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Anyone else? So again, this is going to be a simple majority vote on whether or not to substitute the main motion, which was to approve the zoning article, with a motion to essentially kill this zoning article for the time being. Does anyone have any questions on what they're voting on here? A vote in favor, a vote yay, would be to substitute with the motion to postpone. A vote no would be to return to the debate on the underlying zoning article and the vote on that. Is that clear? Okay. All those in favor of indefinitely postponing, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. I think the nays have it by a majority. If people want to challenge that and vote, it would be 7, but it would seem quite clear to me that the majority was on the nay side there. But I appreciate the motion to amend, and please, Sandy, keep working with the planning board on this. I think your motion is very much appreciated. Okay, we are returning to the main motion, which is to approve the zoning as presented in the motion. It requires a 2/3 vote, because it's changing zoning. Any questions or comments additionally on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. I just want to do this by a show of hands to be careful. All those in favor raise one hand. All those opposed? It carries by a 2/3 vote, I declare, on a hand count. Article 10, zoning amendment regarding site plan approval.
Mr. Moderator, I move to indefinitely postpone Article 10.
Seconded.
Ms. Terrio?
Thank you. The Planning Board also supports an indefinite postponement on this article at the time. Upon further discussion, the Planning Board feels that further research and editing of the subject matter is needed.
Thank you. Mr. Byron, if you want to explain, come up to the mic. If you just want to say you recommend the indefinite postponement there, come on down to the mic. Planning Board recommendation by Mr. Byron.
Yes, I think Joyce said it correctly. We do recommend indefinite postponement because we found additional language in the existing bylaw that we need to work on. And we had already submitted the article and were unable to change it. So we'll be back again in the spring with this change as added to once we work on the language that we think needs approval and changing.
Thank you, Mr. Byron. Anyone else with questions or comments on Article 10? Seeing none, it's indefinite postponement. That's a simple majority vote. All those in favor of indefinite postponement say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. It passes unanimously. Article 11 is a zoning amendment regarding site plan approval. Ms. Terrio?
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 11 as printed in the warrant and as shown on the screen.
Seconded.
Thank you, Ms. Terrio. Any explanation?
Certainly. The revisions made to this section of the Norfolk zoning bylaws reduces the number of paper copies of a proposed site plan to be submitted with application and allows 15 days for the planning board to transmit or forward a digital copy of said plan to the appropriate departments as noted in the warrant.
Thank you. Mr. Byron, the planning board's recommendation.
The planning board recommends approval of this article. We're catching up with the digital age.
Thank you, Mr. Byron. Any questions or comments on Article 11? It is a zoning amendment. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. It passes unanimously. Article 12, funding of an energy audit. Mr. Lutz.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 12 as printed in the warrant.
Seconded.
Mr. Lutz.
These funds will allow the Energy Committee to hire a firm to conduct deep energy assessments on a number of municipal buildings, which will result in a series of recommendations for energy conservation and energy reduction projects. The Energy Committee can then use these projects and their plans to complete the town's application to the State Green Communities Program. Once accepted into the Green Communities Program, the town will have access to at least $140,000 in grants, which can be used to complete the recommended projects.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz, and I'm informed that members of the Energy Committee are here to answer questions if necessary. A question over here. Come on down to the mic.
Hi, Jeff Berkner, Wampanoag Avenue. I just had a few questions.
Sure.
If we do spend this up to $15,000, does that cover the entire cost of the energy audits for the town? Number two, after the audit, does the town automatically get $140,000, or do we have to apply for that? Number three, for the additional grants, is the $250,000 available to Norfolk, or is it apportioned among several towns? That was mentioned in this flyer. And then four, are we required to spend money to implement any energy conservation measures identified in the audit, and is there a time limit to implement those measures?
Okay, great. Stay right there because there was a bunch of questions. I'm not sure how good Andy's memory still is, but you know, we'll see how it goes.
I'll start at the end first. The $250,000 is actually eligible funding that's outside of the designation grant of $140,000. So I think I got the first and second question, the first and last question, sort of.
Well, is the entire 250 available to the town, or is
the
it?
250 is a maximum based upon a particular project. And I'll use the example. Let's just say you're looking at a boiler system replacement. Based on the cost savings, the energy savings, you could get up to $250,000. So
Okay.
Yeah, that would be considered maximum. It's done on a project by project basis. The $15,000 is actually higher than the bid that we did receive. And to give you some background, we actually had met with the selectmen earlier this year about what we call quid pro quo, where the audits would be done for nothing. The problem is you're at the risk that consultant is expecting to also do the work and bring their consultants in and their contractors in. And this is how you end up paying $1,200 for a $200 thermostat. First-hand knowledge, believe me, it happens. So that's what we were trying to avoid. So, and then, let's see.
Do we automatically get the $140,000?
The $140,000 comes after after the application comes in. This energy audit does a couple things. It identifies priorities for each building. It also identifies other projects that could be done, may not have to be done. That it also may identify life expectancy of certain things that 5 or 10 years down the road may have to be done. As grants become available, we could accelerate those. So this is, there's a lot of flexibility in how that money is spent.
Okay. And I guess my big concern on the last question was, are we going to be required to spend this money? I mean, even though it's perhaps a good idea to spend this money to implement these.
I will apologize because I think that
I don't want to have the town.
Just one at a time. So let's.
I don't want to have the town discover that they now have to spend a lot more money than we were expecting.
Right. I will apologize sort of with the expectations, since I work with this business. I work with our other municipalities that are green communities, as well as some that are not green communities that are undergoing energy audits as well. There should be the expectation that there will be additional requests coming in the future. Obviously, I'm not going to say we're going to look to get $1 million to do something, because I don't think we have any projects that would be at that level. But at the same time, you might see, and I'll use the example of the HVA system at the town hall. That's going on 20 plus years, and if you listen to it when it starts up and squeaks and it doesn't sound good, I mean, that's a perfect thing, and I can speak from firsthand that the complaints that the staff that works there, the cold and hot sections, I mean, that needs some attention. That's a big ticket item. But again, some of this money could be used for the study, for the engineering study. There's also rebates that the utilities have that come and go, fluctuate, but we would be, the whole point would be to try and get as much funding outside of requesting the town to fund 100%. So, and this is happening, I mean, 30 or 40 municipalities I've worked with. recent one up in the North Shore now, we have nameless, you know, the work that they had requested from town meeting was $150,000, and they got $105,000 from the utilities. And they aren't a green community, so you just have to hit the funding available at the right time. Plus, utilities are being pushed by the state to spend money this year.
Thank you, Andy. Don't go too far, Mr. Dooley.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sean Dooley, 11 Wright Farm Road. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I just had a question from the standpoint, I know last year when we were here, the green community designation, it was presented that we only had, the only thing that we needed to satisfy getting the green community designation and then achieving the designation grant of $125,000 was the only remaining criterion is the adoption of the stretch energy code, which we did. Is this addition on top of that?
This is to support the application to the
Okay.
to the state. Yes.
So when it was presented last November, it said that the only thing we had to do remaining was to adopt the stretch energy code in order to receive this. So this is.
Well, Sean, I know that you're familiar with the process, and I appreciate it.
Andy, if you want to respond to the question, that's fine. I don't know what Mr. Dooley's familiar with or not familiar with, but rather.
No, I'm just trying to clarify. I mean, I have the, you know, the thing that was put out by the Energy Committee last year that said that the only remaining criteria for the adoption of the stretch energy code was getting the adoption of the stretch energy code, and then it says once we receive that, we get a green community program. The green awards a designation grant of $125,000. So I guess I'm asking, have we received the $125,000 green community grant, which was expressed last November? And is this in addition to this, or is this different, or what exactly is this? And if this is the exact same thing, why didn't we receive it last year, and why are there additional costs? Because that was not what was presented by the Energy Committee last year. So I guess that's I'm just trying to get some clarification that, you know, I thought we already did everything last November in order to qualify for this grant.
I will, just responding specifically to the questions.
Right. We did the 5 criteria, we did pass that with the final step being the stretch code. This is basically as part of the application to become the green community designation. Since last year, I mean, we've been looking at ways of trying to get the energy audits done. Energy audit that was done 5 years ago that was paid for basically is now out of date, so we essentially have to update that. There's been a lot of other improvements that have been done in the town that were that look at energy savings. The town hall, the town lights in the center town, and I know Matt has done some lighting work at the schools as well. So we need to update this information, and this is what this grant is, or this request is for, is to update the energy.
And the status, how does just to answer so we don't have any more back and forth, the $125,000 grant?
We do not have it yet because we have not submitted the application to the state, because we do need to get the energy audit completed to support that.
Thank you.
And then I guess the follow-up is the $125,000, how is that different than the $140,000 grant?
I don't know where the $125,000 is coming from. I mean, the potential first designation grant is $140,000. The $250,000 that was mentioned are for special projects that are eligible, being a green community as well. That's how.
I mean, this was from the Norfolk Energy Committee, Andy Bakanowski, Chairman, 11/14/2017. Yep. So I mean, that's where I'm getting my information from. Yep. So I mean, if you don't know where it's coming from, I mean, sorry. I'm not meaning to direct.
And you're starting to get argumentative.
No, exactly, and I apologize. So basically, we haven't received any grant money, and that there's an additional $15,000, even though what was presented last year didn't show anything. So I guess that's the.
I can't speak to what was shown or not shown last year.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, can I
Very, very briefly, Mr. Bakanowski, okay. And then I want to have other people.
Okay. I mean, you know, the bottom line is that in order to save money, you have to spend some money, and realize that any money that we do spend on energy efficiency, there's a return on it, whether it's lighting or any type of fuel savings measures. So this is the way I look at it for investment. Other towns have invested in this program extensively to the point where they're spending millions of dollars over the course of several years. But again, they're planning for it. It's never our intent to come and say we need $4 million to do a project. I mean, we have plenty of low-hanging fruit where it can be done with the designation grant and minor amounts of rebate money from the utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Bakanowski. Sir?
My question is, we've taken some steps towards becoming a green community. We passed the stretch code last year, I guess it was. My question is, I guess other communities have become green communities and it's been very expensive. Do we have some estimate of the total overall cost to become a green community and implement all of the recommendations that come out of that?
That's hopefully what the energy audit will give us. They'll give us a roadmap of what we need to spend. At the same time, you know, we have 250,000 square feet of building space in town. You know, some of the largest energy users are the public safety building, the schools, and all those will be prioritized. And you attack the ones that are either the biggest energy users or the ones that are easiest to accomplish with quick savings. And hopefully, those savings will roll into, bigger savings as time goes on, because as energy costs go up and you're just doing cost avoidance.
I think I heard a number like $40 million that Franklin had to spend. Is that right?
That's what I heard. They're also 3 times the size we are. Plus, realize that a lot of their cost is their street lighting. I mean, Norfolk has, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, about 320 streetlights. Not that many. Not that many. That's something that we could achieve the 20% goal by replacing those and changing those out too. But there's other lighting in other buildings too. The pumps that we run for the wells, I know that there's been some work done in the past, but again, the technology is changing so quickly that you realize some savings with those too. So,
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McDonough.
Steve McDonough, 4 Whites Pond Drive in lovely Norfolk. Just a point of clarification. So a couple of people mentioned like this town had to spend, but maybe just to clarify, it's whatever, my understanding is that whatever might be spent on a project needs to be approved. So there's no requirement of spending. Could you clarify that perhaps?
That's correct. At the same time, I mean, let's just say the next time we have town meeting, we'll come up with an energy plan after this audit is done, identifying X, Y, and Z buildings that could use energy upgrades, whether it's lighting, whether it's heating systems, whether it's controls, something like that. We can, we would prioritize it, provide costs, estimates, all that. But again, until we get this audit completed, we're guessing at where we could start. I mean, this building, you could be looking at these lights. These lights could be changed out too. I mean, it might be something as simple as that. Typically, just so you know, you see about a 30% savings if you change out lighting from either incandescents or floods to LEDs. So, I mean, that gives you an idea of a potential cost savings. So,
thank you, Mr. Bakanowski. It's the second time you sat down. Next time, next time. Any further questions on Article 12 or comments? Yeah, you have one, Sue?
One of the questions that I had that we didn't get answered in the advisory meeting that you came to is, without spending the $15,000, if we were to say, we know the HVAC system needs to be updated and we just update it, we update it in a green way, same thing with our own lights. Are we not eligible for rebates from the government? Are we only eligible if we spend this money and get an outside person to come in and audit it? I mean, can we just, I guess my question is, sorry, trying to be concise.
I think I understand.
Can we update the things that need to be updated on our own with the intelligence of doing it in a green way and still apply for rebates? Or do we have to have this particular plan and then be locked into completing, I believe what you said was 20% of it, to be able to get the money in that way?
The town can undertake whatever energy project they want to. I mean, you're eligible for any type of energy rebates. I'll use the public safety building. If I remember talking with Jack, I think we were looking at several $1,000s in lighting rebates because it's new construction. That work is being done independent of the Energy Committee. So that's one scenario. The fact that we have the opportunity doing this audit and getting $140,000 in the designation grant, which as projects keep going year after year, we would be receiving stuff. It only supplements. The whole goal is to try and minimize out-of-pocket from the town's operating budget by supplementing that through grants and through rebates, and as special projects come up and other programs become developed through DOER.
So question, Andy, to kind of bring Sue's question around, we don't have access to the 140 if we don't spend this 150, if we don't spend this 15.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. All right.
As well. Kristen Ballish, Kingsbury Road. So I heard you say that the actual estimate at this point, though, is below this 15,000,
Yes.
right? So we're just saying today, we're willing to spend up to this to make this happen. It will likely be less, and we're not obligated to spend anything that they recommend, correct?
That's correct.
Anything they recommend will have to come back to this body.
The best way I describe it to clients is that this is a roadmap for the next 5 years. That's the best way to put this, and that you'll have your priorities will be set. They will hopefully do a complete return on investment, and if they don't, it comes back as a draft, and we'll keep getting, we'll keep sending it back to them until they give us the exact numbers we're looking for.
Great, thank you.
So, okay.
Seeing no one else at the mic, this requires a simple majority vote. All those in favor of funding the energy audit, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Nicely done. Article 13 is a land acquisition. Mr. Hurwitz.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 13 as printed in the warrant with the change shown on the screen in red.
Seconded.
Mr. Hurwitz.
All right. The opportunity has arisen to acquire 5 acres of land from the Department of Corrections adjacent to the Pond Street recreational facilities. This purchase will allow the town the opportunity for future expansion of the Pond Street recreational and field facilities at an extremely advantageous purchase price. For the colorly challenged, such as myself, the change in red on the screen is the cash sum is $4,000. Would be the purchase price for 5 acres of land.
Questions, comments on this? Seeing none, this is a land acquisition. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Before we get to the last article, Mr. Fronczak, you can stay there. I too would like to express my appreciation and gratitude for Mr. Hathaway's service. I'll miss his professionalism, his kindness, his wit. I hate to see him go. Good town administrators are hard to find, and he is a good one. I wish him and his unquestionably better half, Liz, all the best. And for all that he has had to endure for the last decade or so, I hereby move for a resolution that Selectman Jim Lehan pay for Jack's drinks after town meeting. And I have a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Not even Jim voted no. It is a resolution. Thank you. Article 14, bylaw amendment, Mr. Fronczak.
It's hard to beat that. Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 14 as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Fronczak.
Okay. There are many committees and boards that the town has, but one of these boards is not like the others. The Council on Aging has term limits. None of our other boards or committees do. As someone who served on a couple different boards, it can be challenging to find people. This article will remove term limits on the Council of Aging, bringing that council in line with all the other boards in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fronczak. Any questions? Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes, I'm curious as to whether anybody here can tell me why the term limit was put on in the first place. That is, why, I understand the goal of fixing it, but why is the condition, how did the condition that we need to fix come about?
I'll have Mr. Hathaway lead off that discussion.
I actually just wanted one more chance at the mic, so thank you, David. Actually, Jay kind of gave me the history of this. I think there were some personalities involved at some point decades ago, or I'll leave it at decades, maybe not quite that long ago. And so there were some people that we were trying to encourage to move on to greener pastures. And I guess the only other thing that I would like to add, kind of when you watch those award shows and people give their speeches and it's all very nice, and then later they say, oh, geez, I wish I had thanked somebody. My wife's support, for everything that I do is, I want to thank her. So. So for one last time, I've enjoyed the last 14, 15 years. It's a great community, and I thank you all very much.
Mr. Rosenberg, for some additional context, over the years after the bylaw was implemented, there were several members that wanted to continue to give their service to the Council on Aging, and the selectmen were put in a bind of wanting to reappoint them, but they had been term limited out. This will remedy that, and of course, if the selectmen do feel that someone needs to go to greener pastures, then they have the power of the appointment. And it will be managed that way. So it does provide a bit of a fix.
So a follow-up question is, do you know approximately when this term limit was put into the bylaws?
I think it's actually written in the bylaws, but I was the chairman of the Council on Aging for 10 years until just last year, and it was several years before that. So it's probably around 20 years old or so, I would guess.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on our last article, Article 14? Seeing none, it requires a simple majority vote in that it's a general bylaw. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes unanimously, and I will accept a motion to adjourn. Second? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Have a great night, and thank you for your time tonight.